Hello and welcome to today's TES web chat. My name's Sarah Canane and I'm Editorial Content Manager here at TES Resources, and I'm delighted to be joined in the studio here by Barbara Band, librarian. Hello, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Excellent. Barbara is Head of Library and Resources at the Embrook School near Wokingham in Berkshire, and she's also the organiser of a lobby campaigning to make school libraries compulsory. And it's this lobby that marched on Parliament last week that we're here to talk about today. If you'd like to send in any questions during the chat, feel free to do so. You can email webchat@tes.co.uk. Alternatively, you can get in touch with us through Twitter by tweeting at TES Resources or using the hashtag TESchat. So we hope to hear from you throughout this web chat. So, Barbara, could you just start us off by explaining a bit about how the lobby came about, please?
Yes, well, about 3 years ago, 2009, author Alan Gibbons started the campaign for the book. And at the time, I'd been on a school trip to the Houses of Parliament, first time I visited, and where I'd heard about the beekeepers who'd the month previously successfully lobbied Parliament. And when I got back, I sort of talked about this idea amongst librarians, but there was so much else happening that people didn't really pick up on the idea. Since then, we've had a lot of research done on reading, benefits of school libraries. The government, one of their priorities is to reading across the curriculum for every child to read daily for pleasure. Ofsted have included this in their new guidelines. So one of the members of the School Librarian Network mentioned, why don't we lobby? By coincidence, I went on another trip to Parliament and managed to get some information about how to organise a mass lobby, and found myself on the books in the diary as the mass lobby organiser for school libraries. So that's how it started, really.
And why was a lobby needed?
It's needed because of several reasons, really. One is that school libraries are not statutory, which is quite incredible when you think about it. Libraries
So nothing at all?
No, there's nothing that says a school has to have a library.
Incredible.
Yes, it is unbelievable, isn't it? In prisons they do. They're statutory in prisons, but not in schools. So, and when you talk to the government about this, their response is that, yes, we know libraries are important, we know you get benefits from having a school library and a professional librarian, but we don't want to tell schools how to spend their money. It's up to the head teacher. And the way they see it is that head teachers that know that a library's got, library has benefits. Well, they obviously don't all, because some of them have cut their libraries. They've closed their libraries, or they've reduced the hours. They've made the librarian redundant and replaced them with part-time staff, but who are still expected to provide the same service. And we just feel that it is unfair for some children to have access to the benefits of a school library and a librarian, and some children don't. So we think every child should have equal access.
And how far do you feel that these cuts are due to budgetary constraints, and how far do you feel it's due to perhaps ignorance of what a school librarian actually
I think
does?
the bottom line is budget, because I don't know, I've been a school librarian for quite a while, but not always. And so I don't know what the situation was like before I became a school librarian, which is about 20 years ago now. I would imagine, when I think back to my school, we had a library, and most people probably remember a school library of some sort being at school. So I think it really is budget. It's an easy target because they don't have to have them, because they don't have to have a library. So instead of cutting the budget across all departments, maybe upsetting lots of people, it's easier to let's cut the library. We don't have to pay for any resources. We don't have to pay the wages of the librarian. Easy target.
Indeed. And the lobby itself, what were the outcomes? How successful was it?
Right, we were very pleased with the outcomes. About 120 people or so marched on the day, all wearing these T-shirts.
Lovely T-shirt.
And we had several already had pre-arranged appointments with their MPs. Many didn't, but they went into Parliament and they what is known as green carded their MP. So they told their MP they were there. They filled in a card. It is a green card. That's why it's called green carded. Tell their MP they're there, and if the MP's in Parliament, they'll come and visit them. They'll come and speak to them. If they're not there, then this gets sent to them, so they know they've had a constituent visit them. So they then can reply, you see. So we had a lot of people were going in and green carding their MPs, and we had a really good response from MPs coming out to meet their constituents. One MP has already raised an early day motion in support of school libraries, and at the last count, when I looked, which was this morning actually, was 21 MPs have signed this. And I, together with some other lobbyists and the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, the Chief Executive, Annie Major, plus Justin Tomlinson, who's an MP and who is chair of the all-party parliamentary group for libraries. We met with Liz Truss, who's the Minister Under Secretary for Schools, and we discussed the issues with her, and she has commissioned the APPG for libraries to research into the benefits of school libraries, and also to look at why some heads have closed their libraries, why they don't actually feel they need a library, and to report back to her. So yeah, we're pleased with that.
Yeah, so it's really moved things forward.
Yeah, it's a step further forward, yeah.
And when you say compulsory and making them statutory, are you talking about in primary schools, in secondary schools, in both?
Right, now it's really difficult because every school is different. This is where problems arise. Every school is different, every user group is different, and the budget of a school is tied up in a way with how many students they have. And each school obviously has to provide a certain level of basic requirements for their students. So whilst large schools can probably fund a library, smaller schools would struggle. Now, what we've had with some MPs, what they've said is that it won't work if you make it statutory, but what they see it working is including libraries in Ofsted inspections, because they're not even looked at in most schools at the moment. Even in my school, where I have a massive amount of support, Ofsted come and use my sixth form library as their base. So they're in and out of the library all the time, but I've never been asked about how I interact with the children, how I work with the staff, level of resources, and nothing, which is really bizarre.
That does sound bizarre. I mean, why is it that it's not included at the moment?
I guess because they're not statutory, because they're not a requirement. So and in a school where they've got a very good reading ethos and all the children are reading, they won't really look at why it's working, because they only tend to look at what's failing, don't they?
Yeah.
So, and we don't really see how a school can be given an outstanding, criteria, if you like, outstanding if they don't have a school library.
And we've got a question in from Chantel, who's our TES English advisor. Hello, Chantel. She wanted to know if you could just offer a brief summary of the benefits of a good school library and the role of the librarian within that. Please.
Right, okay. Summary of the benefits. Reading for pleasure. This is one of the things, as I said, the government are pushing at the moment. The best way to get children to read for pleasure, or I tend to call it free voluntary reading, is to give them choice, give them a wide range of resources, let them choose. And by that, it's not just books, it's non-fiction, fiction, magazines, newspapers. The only place you're going to find that range of resources is in a library. Right? If you give children a wide range of resources, let them choose, they will start reading for themselves. They will read for pleasure. Reading for pleasure improves their vocabulary, improves their grammar. They therefore, they tend to view themselves, children that read for pleasure will view themselves as being good readers. They will read more outside school. Their reading levels will increase, which is, you would expect, because they're reading more. They're practicing. I say to my students, reading is like playing a sport or a musical instrument. You have to practice at it to get better. So their reading level improves. But not only that, it impacts on every other subject. The research shows that when children read for pleasure, their attainment goes up in all the other subjects as well. It also has emotional and social benefits. Children that read for pleasure tend to be more rounded individuals. They're more tolerant. They have a wider view of society, and they're exposed to different cultures and different ideas through the stories. So they tend to take them on board more. The research also shows that they've done research where they've looked at people in their mid-30s, and those that read as teenagers, read for pleasure, are actually in better jobs in their mid-30s. And they say it's not because they've got better qualifications, it's because they're actually more articulate
Yeah.
and can express themselves better, both in writing and orally, so they actually do better at interviews and when they're filling in application forms. So that's, as for what a librarian does, that's like saying how long's a piece of string, to be honest. I would suggest there's a website called Heart of the School. And it's full of masses of information that librarians have put on there, where they've written about book awards they've shadowed, they've written about reading schemes they've run, there's things about displays, about author visits, you name it, what librarian does, it will be on that website.
Yeah.
So if anybody really wants to know what we do, and I think this is half the problem, people don't, they think we just sit there with our books every day. If you really want to know what we do, then look on the website.
Okay, and that's Heart of the School,
Yeah.
is that? Okay, fantastic. Your slogan for the lobby, as evidenced by your fantastic T-shirt there, the best at a school librarian.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what led to you choosing that as a phrase?
Right. When we formed a working party to put together strategies and ideas for publicity, we put the question. We need a slogan to put on T-shirts and things. And I have to say, Micro Librarian System sponsored our T-shirts. They said they sponsored the T-shirts. They didn't want a logo on, which was absolutely fantastic. So we put this out, and we had lots and lots of ideas. And a librarian's husband actually suggested the best after school librarian. And other people suggested Wordles, and we sort of wanted to combine the two.
Yeah.
To get an idea, and the problem is with a T-shirt, you don't want it too wordy because people can't read it as you're walking past. But we wanted it to actually say more than just school librarians, or more than just books and reading, because we're a lot more than just that. So,
Yeah.
So this is what we are. So the top bit's sort of like the, oh, I've touched my mic. So is that all right? Top bit's like the imaginary things, the imagining, the dreaming, creativity, and the bottom bit is where you get down to the practical things we do, like we're teaching information skills and evaluating resources and getting them to think about what they're reading, stuff like that. So.
And how far do you feel technology has actually threatened school librarians' positions?
I don't think it's a threat at all. Back at my school, I don't have a lot of technology in my library. It doesn't seem to be what they want. I've got some Kindles for the library, and apart from the first interest in them, most of my students seem to want to pick up the books to read. That's what they want. I do know other libraries, though, that use a lot of technology, and they use iPads, Kindles, all that. So it's not a threat. They're just another tool for us to use to promote reading. I mean, I've used YouTube clips to show in my classes. For example, last year, the film that won the Oscar for short animation, the Flying Books of Maurice Lesmore, I showed that to all my Year 7 and Year 8s. And it was brilliant, you see. So I do, use it where it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And there's a massive amount of authors creating YouTube book reviews. And I use those as well. Rather than talk to them about the books, I'll show them a whole range of these YouTube book reviews, and then say, right, yeah, I've got all the books here. You can only do that once though, because they all take out the books then, so that's no good for the next. So good for the next class.
So what you're saying is more authors need to get online.
Yeah. No, they are. Well, they have blogs. They have their own websites.
Yeah.
Students can email them questions about their books, and they'll answer them. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And we've had a question in from, I think this is BBECLRC. Thank you very much for that very difficult to say name on Twitter. And they ask, should school librarians be seen as academics or seen as staff?
I think we're in between at the moment. Most librarians are counted as support staff. But we actually have as much contact with students as teachers, and we also have a teaching role. So I think we should be seen as part of the academic staff. I mean, I certainly run a department where I'm at the MBook. There is only me actually, but I'm head of department. So it's very difficult, and a lot of us are professionally qualified, so we're on a par with teaching staff. So, but we're not viewed in the same way, unfortunately, by a lot of people.
Do you think that would help if you were?
Well, possibly. You mean to give more status to
yeah.
libraries? It may do. Yes, I know some schools have put their librarians on the academic staff, which I guess improves. Increases your exposure amongst teaching staff, and they'll view you as an equal.
Yeah.
It does vary so much, though. This is the trouble. So problem we have.
We've had a question in from Val Dewhurst. Hello, Val. She said, what can librarians do now that the lobby's over?
Right, okay. Well, the lobby might be over, but we are still carrying on promoting the cause. What we're doing is obviously everybody that did lobby on the day, they're following up meetings that they had with their MPs and things. We're asking people, not just librarians, everybody can do this. Contact your friends, your family, your colleagues. We want everybody to contact their local MP, tell them about the early day motion, ask them to sign it. If they can't, because some either don't feel it's worth signing, because very often not much happens from an early day motion, but and some of them aren't it's protocol that they don't sign if they're in the government, things like that. If they can't sign it or don't want to, then we're saying get them to write to Michael Gove to say that they are in support of the early day motion and the lobby aims. And the next thing as well is, and I'm waiting to hear about this, is the APPG for libraries is obviously going to be collecting evidence, and is where librarians will be able to help, because we'll be able to provide that evidence. So as soon as I hear anything about that, then I'll be putting out on the communication network about what we can do to help. So yeah.
And
That's the first stage anyway.
And that sort of ties into a question from Jilly, who wants to know how she can raise awareness of the campaign within her own school.
Right. Now, on SlideShare, I don't know if she's part of Facebook, there is a mass lobby page on Facebook, which everybody's welcome to join.
How can people find that?
It's if you put in mass lobby for school libraries, it will come up. It'll come up top of the list. There's a Candy Gourlay, who's an author who lobbied with us on the day, has created an amazing SlideShare about why we lobbied and how you can get involved and contact your own. So if somebody wants to search on SlideShare, they'll find it, because I think it was the most searched for. So I was told earlier today it was the most searched on SlideShare, so it'll be top of the list. Or go onto Facebook. There's a lot of information on the Facebook page, and I've linked it in with the Google Docs, so there's template letters and all sorts of things on there for people to use. So.
Oh, fantastic!
So I was going to say, in response to that, then that would be something she could show her staff. A briefing or an inset session or something to explain why we've got the lobby and how they can help. So.
And Val has a follow-up question. She wants to know sort of where have you got a plan B, basically?
What you mean if everybody ignores us? Another lobby, I guess. No, actually, it's funny. Before we actually lobbied, I was talking to somebody, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, we lobby. If this doesn't work, we're going to lobby again. And if we have to, then we will. And hopefully next time, then we'll get more people, because more people will be aware of what's happening." Plan B, I don't know. We need to just keep on and on, letting people know what we do, publicising what we do, telling the public and anybody who will listen that we need, not we, but the children need school libraries. We have a UK population where 1 in 6 have literacy problems. That means they are at the average age of an 11-year-old. Right, and that's an adult population. We are dropping down the literacy international scales. We've got a problem with public libraries being shut. Basically, that's another issue totally. But we are creating this generation of children who are coming through with literacy problems, who are not reading, and they're going to feed in to the rest of the adult population and just make the literacy problem worse in the adult population. Yeah. We need to get this targeted earlier, so these children, when they feed through, do not enter adulthood with a literacy problem.
Just to play devil's advocate for a moment, I mean, obviously you're saying that quite a lot of the library cuts are being brought about because of budgetary constraints. I mean, if the money goes towards libraries, where else can schools cut So to
Right.
give you some money.
Yeah, I see. That is difficult, but we actually support all departments in a school. So instead of school departments having to provide their own resources, which they keep all in the department, we can provide those within the library, which all departments can use. The problem with having departmental resources is they're not available to other people to use, are they? So, for example, if you've got World War One resources in history, the students studying First World War poets can't access them. So they buy their own resources, so you're duplicating it really. So if you have the central resource with like the library and provide facilities for everybody, then it saves this duplication. You know, but yes, it is difficult, isn't it? It's priorities. It's what you think is important.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, sort of, certainly from what you've been saying, that can we afford not to have a school
Exactly.
library?
Yeah. Can you afford not to? Yeah.
Elizabeth Bentley's got in touch via email. She wants to know what, if you could explain what the special benefits to children's and young people's independent learning capabilities a school librarian
Right.
can
So
bring.
the other side of the coin, if you like, we live in an information-rich society. You know, if you do a search on Google, you come up with millions of hits. And the problem is, only 6% of what is on the internet, what is on the web, is written for educational purposes. And we are expecting these children to find that 6% amongst the... It's scary, isn't it? Nobody actually teaches them how to find that. No, they're taught bits and pieces throughout the school, but there's no one central place where they're taught how to search properly, how to evaluate their websites that they're coming up with, how to decide if it's something that's trying to persuade, change their views, if it's an opinion, if it's bias. They do this in bits and pieces, but they don't sort of equate it to when they're searching for information. They think what they read on the internet is real, is true. They believe what they read because it's there on the internet. They also have a tendency to just cut and paste from it, you see. They think, well, I've had a year 7 girl say to me, when I've been talking about, making notes, and making notes isn't copying and cutting and pasting, her comment was, isn't that what the internet's for?
So we don't have to think.
No, and they're something quite amazed that the internet is not there just so they can cut and paste. So we teach all these other skills. We teach, it's finding the right resource for your needs, and it isn't always the internet. You see, this is the problem. I think this is why some libraries have been closed. People, heads, teachers, whatever, think we don't need books. We've got the internet, but not everything is available on the internet, and it isn't always the best place to look for information. And I even I've noticed more and more actually now that when I've got a research class in, and we say to them, you want to use the books or the internet, we give them choices. Not always, but sometimes. A lot of them will say, oh no, I'm going to use the books because the internet's just a load of rubbish. And it isn't, but what's happened is when they've tried to look for something, they've not been able to find what they want. They've wasted their time, which is, I think, as a librarian, I think this is get them to start with the books, but and also just looking for information using the right keywords. How to use a search engine properly, how to narrow down your searches, things like that. Instead of, if you're looking for pet dogs, don't put in dogs, because they don't quite understand. They get dogwood roses and dogwood avenue. They just don't understand how it works. So give up. Yeah.
Blimey.
Yeah, difficult.
And just to sort of round things off, I mean, if you had to sum up the lobby, why school libraries and school librarians are important in a sentence, say, if you had to...
Oh, one sentence.
One sentence, yeah,
right.
to put you on the spot, what would you say?
That is hard. One sentence. Oh, dear me. Because school libraries are the only place where children will have that range of resources to access and be allowed to go in and wander and choose what they want and to lose themselves in whatever they find.
That is lovely.
Thank
You
you.
very much. All that's left for me to do today is to thank Barbara for taking time out to come and visit us. As she said, you'll be able to find quite a lot of what we've talked about today on the Facebook page, searching for Mass Lobby for School Libraries. So if you pop onto Facebook, you should be able to find it there. And if you enjoyed today's web chat, keep an eye out for the soon-to-be-launched TES English blog, which will feature a post by Barbara entitled Top Tips for a Tip-Top Library. Join us again very soon for another web chat. You'll be able to find all the details of upcoming web chats at tes.co.uk/web chats. But goodbye for now. Thank you.